Hey everybody, it's Steph with Killer Sites. In this video, I'm going to get off of code just for a minute because I want to talk about crazy audiophile nerds. Now, an audiophile is somebody who's really into sound and music. And so what they typically do, well, what they always do is they spend a lot of money on speakers, amps, they'll get turntables, they'll go into reel-to-reel tapes sometimes, HD audio, and they'll spend all kinds of crazy money on cables that connect the turntables or the CD player or the amps to the speakers and all kinds of other weird stuff. So here's my general comment. Number one, these guys are highly susceptible, in my opinion, to suggestion because they will be presented some product by a vendor who will suggest that the sound would be better because of this or that and the other thing, and they sit there and some of them actually believe it, although, I personally don't hear a difference. Now, let me just say something. I do have some audiophile speakers, and I have an audiophile amp, but I have like on the lower end of it because what I found, there is definitely a difference between the $500 speakers and the $2,000 speakers in terms of sound quality. In terms of the amps, I don't find much of a difference between the amps. Each amp has its own little signature, if you will, its own little sound. It's not necessarily one sounds better than the other, just a little bit different. But the speakers do make a difference. So when you're looking at audio, if you're concerned about audio and audio sounds, that's interesting to you. If it's not, you can just pause the video or leave the video and wait for one of my code videos. If you're looking at sound quality, the two most important things by far accounts for 95% of the sound is the source, meaning the quality of the digital file if it's an HD file, and the quality of the needle on the turntable if you're doing vinyl, and of course the quality of the vinyl itself. There's some differences. Well, the quality of vinyl, 20%. And of course the original recording. If the original recording was well done, then this is going to translate pretty well. And the other major component, and by probably the most important component, is the speakers. The speakers have a huge impact. Again, if you go from $500 speakers to $2,000 speakers, you're going to see a big difference in the sound quality. There's no question. Or you're going to hear a big difference in the sound quality. And that's pretty much it. I've done tests on the cables, done tests on different amps, and other gadgets that they will try to sell you. And it's, in my opinion, it's a load of BS, and you'll see that with a lot of these audiophile guys. They'll come up with these weird terms to try to describe how a particular component in their stereo will make the sound better. They'll say it has better, it's more musical, or it's more present. These weird terms that don't really mean anything in particular. They have a vague meaning, I suppose. That's a sure sign, by the way, when you're dealing with somebody who's less than genuine, in my opinion. If they can't be specific about what they are trying to sell you, what they are describing, that means they either don't know or they are BSing you. So there you go. I've seen these crazy audiophile guys out there on the web, on YouTube, and I have to admit, it's one of my entertainments. I like watching these guys because they will review like $50,000 turntables or $80,000 speakers and claim that it's worth it to bargain these speakers, or $1,000 cables, or CD players that are these huge CD players with all kinds of gadgets and tubes in them and all kinds of weird stuff. And they're very expensive CD players. I don't know the price. They could be $10,000 for a CD player. And, and they'll think that somehow the sound is going to be much better. Again, this said, yes, there is some differences in sound quality when it comes to the quality of the cartridge you put on a turntable, if you're into turntable. There is some difference in sound quality when you have a HD digital file, a 24-bit digital file. There is also a difference when you have a real good speaker. But all this other jazz, and it just, I just don't hear it, and I think it's a bunch of suggestion, meaning psychological suggestion. People, like, if you go to a hypnotist show, 40% of people are susceptible to suggestion. So you tell them they're a chicken, 40% will think they're a chicken. you tell these people that this special wire is going to open up the sound, 40% of people will believe that because you just suggested it and they're susceptible to it. Again, this might get some audiophile people crazy, but I'm putting this out there as sort of like a friendly warning to people. Don't get caught up with this craziness of spending tens of thousands of dollars on components. I remember a friend of mine came over and he had spent $45,000 on a stereo, which is actually quite modest for audiophiles. And I had spent about $3,000 on mine, turntable with a pair of speakers and an amp. $4,000. And he closes his eyes, he listens, he's silent, he listens, and then he goes, it sounds pretty much like mine. And of course, my stereo costs 1/10 of his. And so I should tell you something. So be careful with the audiophile stuff. It's the laws of diminishing returns really kicks in. Speakers do make a difference, but after like $3,000-$4,000 speakers, I could not hear the difference personally between the $3,000 speaker and the $50,000 speaker. To my ears, there's no difference. So that's all I got to say. Ciao.